How do you create digital art? But first, why would you want to create digital art? Well, when you create digital art, it's actually the best way to learn Photoshop. So instead of going through all these kind of tutorials where you hear stuff get explained how to do that, it's better to actually create something inside Photoshop. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create this image. So we will use this image of a line and we will do color blending, lighting, light effects, and all the other good stuff to create this piece of art. So when you watch this video, follow along with the images in the description of the video. You can download them there. And at the end of the video, you will create pretty much the same artwork. And that way you can learn Photoshop. Keep in mind that I have Photoshop courses where I teach more about digital art or even post-processing wildlife photos if you're into that. So check the link in the description, there is a discount. So I'm gonna go through this whole video and it's gonna be a lot of fun and you will learn a lot of stuff about Photoshop. All right, we are back in Photoshop. So let's start with creating a brand new file. And the size I'm going to use is 4000 by 5000 pixels. I recently bought a new MacBook Pro M3 Max, so I can now do pretty big sizes while recording everything. If you have an older machine, you can go for 2160 by 2700 for instance, or even smaller like 1080 by 1350, but I'm gonna go for 4000 by 5000. So this depends on your machine, of course. Now let's start with dragging our line into this composite. And as you can see, I removed the background already. This is a pretty boring part, so I did that for you. So you can just download these images from the description and place them in this file, right? So you don't have to remove backgrounds because that's super boring. Now, first of all, I'm gonna make sure where I want to place this line. So I'm gonna go for somewhere here. And the problem here is we need to fill this area, right? So for this, I downloaded this image of a rock, and this is what I'm going to use to fill this area down here. So just drag it inside the composite and let's make it a bit bigger like that. And now I'm going to place it behind our lion. And now you can see it doesn't look right, but with Ctrl T, we can resize this and rotate it. So I want to make sure this part looks good. So let's move it somewhere there and let's see, just like that. This is fine. Now we need to make sure that these blend better together. So first of all, what I'm gonna do is I wanna make this a bit softer. So let's make a mask on the lion. Make sure to click this mask and then just take a brush. And when you go into the brushes, you can select the soft round brush and make sure your hardness is at 0 here. And what I'm going to do now is when I click this and I have black as a foreground color, I can just kind of brush it away like that, right? So it kind of fades in each other. Now you have to be a bit careful here. So I'm going to make the brush small and just make the hardness a bit harder like that. And then I'm going to make it something like that. That should be fine. Now the next thing we need to do is to make sure these colors match, because we have different colors of this one and this one. So first of all, let's actually make a solid color in the background so we can see this better instead of white. I'm gonna go for gray. I feel like gray is pretty good when you create something and you don't have a background yet. So let's go to the rock, this one. And you can see here a part, let's get rid of that part. So let's make a mask first and just brush this part away like that. And now what I want to do is I want to add a color balance. So I'm going to go here and select color balance. And here is the settings for the color balance. And now you want to make sure to press this so we only affect the layer of the rock and not everything underneath it. Right? So let's look at this image. This looks a bit reddish. So I'm going to add some red to it. You can see it already looks better. And I think a bit of yellowish like that. Maybe even more red. Something like this will be fine. Now you can see here we get some lighting reflections coming from there. I want to make this part a bit darker. So I'm going to add a curves also. Don't forget this again. So we only affect the layer of the rock. And I'm going to take the highlights and bring them down just like that. So it's a pretty dark rock. And this already blends way better than it was before. Now we can brush a bit more. So I'm gonna click on the layer of the lion, then just take a black brush and just kind of feel where I need to brush. Just make sure to bring the hardness down again so we can make it a bit softer. And I'm gonna see where can I brush to make this look better. I'm gonna do it just like this. And I think this is already, maybe not that part. If you brush too much, this switch the colors back to white again. This part, eventually I'm gonna make it really dark because I have lighting coming from there. So this part will be pretty dark. So just brush it a bit so it looks kind of realistic like that. I think this is fine for now. We can always brush a bit later if you want to. Just make sure it looks pretty okay. All right, let's move on to the next step. So we have this line here, and what I want to do now is, let me make this a bit bigger. I want to create some lighting. So let's first make a new layer and select the brush again, just a soft round brush. And let's put a white dot there. Now, if I take the move tool and press Ctrl T or Command T, I can resize it. And this will be my sunset. So I want to make a sunset there. So for now, I'm going to just use this one as an example so I know where my lighting is coming from, and that way I can know where I need to brush. So the sun will be, let's zoom even lower. You can see in this image we have already some light reflections on its face, so that's good. We don't have to brush it. And I want to have sunset somewhere there. Now, let's work on the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first put these in one folder so I can brush it everything together. So let's hold down Shift and select these layers. And so not the background layer, just these layers that we just created, and press Ctrl or Command G to group them like that. Now, when I apply a filter to this folder, it's going to apply to everything. And that's exactly what I want now. So I want to add a curves first, and then click this so it only affect this group. And now I'm gonna bring it a bit down like that because I want to make the line a bit darker, but not the front, because the front I want to have light reflections. So let's bring this down, maybe even the midtones like that. Now if I take this mask and let's take a black brush, let's make the brush a bit bigger. I'm gonna brush these parts back again because this is the front. The front we need to keep light like that. Also these parts here and these also here. And because we get some sunset there, we need to make sure that the front part of this mountain is a bit lighter. So let's first brush the line here, maybe a bit there. Also on the top here. Top is pretty dark already, so we need to brush that. And now I'm gonna add a new layer. Press right mouse and create clipping mask. So it's only affecting this layer here, this group. And then go to edit and select fill. And here we will select 50% gray. And when I change the blend mode to overlay, I can use the Dodge tool here to brush areas lighter. So let's make it smaller. Let's go for highlights first and see how that looks. And you can see here, it's getting a bit kind of greenish. So I'm gonna press Ctrl Z, go back and select midtones now to see if this is a bit better. This is slightly better. So I'm gonna brush these parts lighter because I really want to have those areas reflected from the sunset, just like that. Let's also do here. I'm gonna make his face quite light. Let's also do his eye, so you can't really see this eye. And here, let's also do a bit there, kind of lighting that's hitting this side of his face, and also these mains here, like that. Also do here because we have lighting there, so these parts will get some light from the sun. So let's brush a bit more like that. And this already is enough. And now let's compare. We had this and now we made those areas lighter. And this way we can really brush some areas super light if you want to have some beautiful reflections from the sun. Now let's work on the line a bit more. I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna create a new layer and I'm gonna create a clipper mask again. And now I wanna take a brush and let's take something kind of orange, bit yellow orangey, and I'm gonna brush here and I'm gonna play with the blend modes here. So when you switch these blend modes, you can see how this looks. So you can create some really cool reflections here. Usually screen works pretty good, or sometimes overlay, or sometimes soft light. Let's go for soft light. And now you can see I'm creating this kind of orange yellow tones on this side. It's a bit too orange now, so I'm gonna change it after I brushed a bit. So let's first brush a bit on these areas. It's kind of glowing too much now. So I'm gonna change it slightly after I brush these areas. So this is the light from the sunset. Let's do a bit there. And maybe also a bit on his back there. Just like that. Let's do a bit more. I'm also gonna do a bit here. Not there, but a bit on the front here. Because we get sunset. So I wanna make sure these areas are a bit kind of orangey, yellowish tones. Like that. Now let's brush even more. Just like that. All right, so we have these kind of cool yellowish tones, but it's kind of too yellowish. So what I'm gonna do is if I press Ctrl or Command U, I can bring up the hue and saturation. And here I can change this color. So I can even make it white. White also looks pretty good. So let's first drop the saturation a bit of this color and then play around with these sliders. So let's make it a bit more orangey. Let's add some white to it, just like that. And I think this looks already better. So before, after, kind of having a bit of a glow from the sun. All right, let's move on with the background. So the background, we need to add a background image. So I downloaded some images. Let's go to the background here, to the color fill here. And I'm gonna try out some backgrounds. I don't know if it works yet, but let's first try it out. So let's try this one. Gonna make it bigger. And I wanna make sure the sunset is above the horizon and not inside the horizon. So I can't place it like that. I wanna make sure you place it something like this. So it looks like he's really on top of the hill, like that. Let's move it a bit to there. And I think something like this. And now this one I can move a bit around. So maybe my sunset will be somewhere there, right? So this looks fine. Now the only thing we need to make sure is to fill the area of the background. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm pretty sure this will be my background. And now I wanna make sure this top area is filled. So what you could do is to let's first rasterize this layer by pressing right mouse and rasterize layer. What you could do is you can take the selection tool and select this area, take a bit more like that, and then go to edit, content aware fill, and just press OK and it's filled. You can also use generate a fill with this. If you have the latest Photoshop, you can select it and click on generate a fill and generate this with AI. So that's also good. But if you have an older version, just use the other thing that I just showed. So let's fill this and then we can work on the colors because I want to change the color of the background a bit. I feel like I want to have it a bit more darker. I feel like it's too light for me because when it's too light, it's not so mysterious. I want to have it a bit darker, kind of mysterious feeling to the image. So let's first make sure this is completed and then I will add a different color to the background and we will blend everything together as it should. All right, that's the generated fill part. And here you can select different variations of what it created. Let's do this one or this. Let's do this one. It's a bit darker, exactly what I want. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna select these both layers and press Control Command E to just merge them together. All right, now we have this thing here. We probably want to create some more realistic sunset. So I'm gonna disable this for now and I'm gonna create a new one. And I'm gonna select a brush. Let's select a normal brush. And for the color, I'm gonna go something like more yellow orangey and a bit lighter like that. Make sure you have hardness at 0 here, opacity and flow at 100. And let's make a dot in the center, just like that. You can barely see it, but if we press Ctrl T or Command T, let's make it bigger and let's put it there. And let's play with the blend modes again. And let's see, you can see if I select screen, it looks a lot better. Let's duplicate this by pressing Control Command J. So we have a bit stronger sun. And here we can select different blend modes again. So when you go through these, the easiest way is to just kind of go through them like this and see how it looks. I want to select overlay, but overlay doesn't really do something here. So I'm going to press Ctrl U and I'm going to select colorize, and I'm going to increase the saturation and drop the lightness. And I can see we can create this kind of cool effect. So you don't want to make it too dark, just a bit kind of orangey here, like that. Let's press OK. And before we had this, now you have this bit kind of yellow orange light. We can also duplicate the first one again to get more lighting. And this already looks pretty good. All right, so let's work on this image a bit more. So what I want to do now is I want to change the colors a bit, especially in the background. I want to have a bit darker areas here on the top part. So we can just kind of add other images to this. Let's try it out. I have this image of clouds. Let's see how this looks. This looks pretty cool. And when I place it here, I can also play with these blend modes again. So let's see which one looks pretty good. Let's see, maybe overlay. I think I like hard light here. I'm gonna go for hard light, but I wanna make sure we don't see this kind of area here where it's just changing. So what I'm gonna do is let's first make it even bigger with Control Command T. And let's see, I wanna have some clouds kind of around it, above it. Oh, we can do that. That looks weird. Maybe if we make it like this. So I'm just rotating it. And then I'm gonna add a mask to this. And I'm gonna brush some areas away like that. Just like this. Maybe this area was too much. Let's go back. Now let's not do this. Let me rotate it again. And let's delete the mask. And I'm just gonna do it like this. And make it bigger. So you can see it's not like you're always getting the right thing. You have to try stuff out to get the right kind of results. It doesn't always work. So I think this looks pretty good. Something like this. Bit darker, maybe a bit out of the frame like that. Now we have to brush this again. Let's make this lighter so we can see these paws. And I think I like this. Gonna leave it like this so you have a bit darker area here. All right, this is fine. Now let's work on the colors because I feel like the colors can get a lot better. Our background is a bit purplish and the line is too kind of orangey. So what I'm gonna do is, let's see, I'm gonna select these again. So I'm gonna select all these layers by holding down Shift. So these are the layers from the lighting. And this is the layer from the line. And I'm gonna press Control Command G to group this again. So I have this in one folder. Now I'm gonna add a color balance to this whole folder. So let's go to color balance. Let's select this and I'm gonna add some blue to this and a bit red. Let's try purple, bit of purplish, maybe something like this. Now I feel like this line has too much color, so I'm gonna add a hue and saturation. Press this and let's drop the saturation a bit so that it blends better with the background like that. And you can see this looks already better. All right, so let's duplicate this cloud here, this one. I'm just gonna duplicate this layer by pressing Ctrl or Command J, and then I'm gonna go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Because I still wanna have like some clouds here. I feel like it looks better when we have like darker outer parts and the sunset is here and some lighter parts there. So let's move this a bit around to see how this looks. You can see here it looks kind of mirrored, so I'm gonna make the size a bit bigger so it doesn't look exactly the same as the other side, and maybe rotate it slightly like that just to have it a bit different, just like that. All right, now we need to brush a bit of the bottom part here. It's getting too dirty here, so click on the mask and then take a black brush and just brush it away to clean it up a bit. You can also clean this one a bit here. Maybe don't need that one. Let's clean that one a bit. Let's leave a bit in the background. Maybe not. All right. Now let's work on the grass. I want to create some dune grass here. So I have this grass image. Let's go somewhere here between these layers and just drag the grass image there. Now let's go to edit, transform, flip horizontal. So we can make it kind of that way. And then make this smaller with Control Command T. And let's see if we can make it a bit more realistic like that. And then let's add a curves first because this is way too light. Click this so we only affect the dune grass, and let's make it super dark. Also increase the contrast by taking the midtones and bringing them down like that. So we have a bit of grass. Let's also change the color. Let's add the color balance. Don't forget this again. And let's add some blue tones to them. And let's see, some red, bit of purple like that. Now I'm gonna put this in a folder by selecting these layers and pressing Ctrl G. Now I can duplicate this folder by pressing Ctrl J. And let's fill this area with some grass, maybe just like that. Rotate it a bit, duplicate it again, make it smaller, just to have some grass there. Let's put it behind those layers. And I think this is fine. All right, now let's work on the colors. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go to the top layer and I'm gonna add a gradient. And if I select radial here, we can create like this circle. But if we take this, we can move it here. Let's put them here. And let's click OK. And I play with these again. Let's select overlay. And let's create another gradient. And this one will be for the outer parts to make them darker. Let's go for radial again. Let's click on reverse. And when we click the gradient here, we can change the color. And then I'm going to select something. Let's just sample a color. When you click here, you can sample. So a bit of this purplish, but really dark, maybe kind of brownish even, just like that. Just look at the image and see if this kind of feels like it's the same color tones. So I think this is fine. Then I click on OK. And when I click on this one and I click somewhere here, it's going to copy these. And then I take this one and drag it down to remove it. And let's take this one and move it to the right. And let's press OK. And now if we change the scale, we can see how big we want this. So let's make it something like this and move it slightly to the right because our lighting is there. Just like that. Press OK and change the blend mode to overlay. Or even soft light. Let's do soft light. And now I'm gonna drop the opacity because it's way too dark now. So we need to find the right kind of area where we want this. So something like this. So before we add this, now we add this. It's a bit darker. I feel like we get some nice contrast with this trick. All right, this looks already pretty good, I think. And now let's see what we can do to this. I want to make sure, I feel like these colors of the line are not so perfect. So as you can see, every time you create something, you want to change it again over and over until you got it perfect. So I feel like the background is kind of more purplish and I feel like the line is still too yellowish. So let's find the layer of the line. This one, I'm going to go to color balance and I'm going to add some blue tones to this one and some magenta. I feel like this blends better with this image. And you can see we already created something cool. Oh, some little mistake here. Let's see this one, move it a bit up like that. All right, I think this looks already pretty nice. We can also take this dune grass. Let's see this one. And let's move it a bit to the front. Let's move it a bit there. And then when I add a layer to this and click on create clipper mask, then go to edit fill, select 50% gray, change the blend mode to overlay, and let's take the dodge tool so we can make them a bit lighter. So let's make the brush bigger and let's brush these a bit lighter because we have like the sun coming from there. So I want to make sure these parts of the grass are slightly lighter than the ones there because we got this rock blocking that light, just like that. And let's make the other ones slightly darker. So this one, this is the smaller one. I'm gonna add some curves. I'm gonna, oh, don't forget this again. And I'm gonna make it a bit darker like that. And probably also this one. Let's lock this so I don't select it. Where is it? I think it's this one, yes. So I'm gonna add a curve to this to make this even darker. Just like that. Just slightly darker to have it more realistic like that. Let's finalize this image. Go to the top layer and then select here and click color lookup. And here you have LUTs. And I want to select tree strip. It's going to boost these colors like that, but not so much. So I'm going to drop the opacity. Just going to find a nice range here. So probably something like 25 or something. I think this is fine. Now let's create a new layer and then press Ctrl Alt Shift E or Command Alt Shift E to kind of have one layer with everything. Then press right mouse and convert to Smart Object. And now I want to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And here we can do final adjustments. Let me put this here. And I'm going to play with the settings here to see if I can make this slightly better. So let's increase the contrast here a bit. Let's pop these highlights. Maybe the shadows can be a bit darker like that. And let's play with the whites. Maybe slightly lighter whites. And let's make sure the blacks don't get too dark now. Probably the temperature you don't need to change because we already did it a bit in the design itself here with the layer. So the only thing you might want to change is saturation here. So you can really play around with these settings to get the result you want. So I don't want to have it like this, but when you play around with these settings, you can get really cool results. I'm going to leave it like this. Let's move on. If we drop the texture like that, you can see it gets really soft. Some people like this kind of soft effect. I like to keep it a bit real. So I'm going to drop this a bit and increase the clarity. So we get a bit of the soft effect, but not too much. Let's try vignette. Do we need vignette? Not so much. Let's not do that. I'm going to move on to the lighting here again. And here I'm going to play with the settings again. Let's try out these. Maybe a bit light. Let's not do that. And a bit up like that. And this one, I'm going to leave it at 0. Maybe +2 or something. Here we can change the colors again. So when you want to change these color tones, you can do that here. But do it carefully because when you do this too much, you can ruin the whole image like this. So you can play around here if you want to get some different results, but do this carefully. I'm gonna leave it as it is. Let's move on. Let's give it some sharpening and some noise reduction. I think the background had some noise, so that's fixed. And let's move on to the last part here, calibration. And here we can have some fun with the colors again. So I really like this part because in this part we can really change the color of the background and all that stuff. You can see here we get some really cool tones, but I think our colors are pretty good already. Maybe just a bit like this. Let's try out this one. No, let's try this one. No, I'm gonna leave it as it is. Maybe the last one. One more try. I think it already looks fine. Not gonna change that. Let's press OK. And now you can see before we had this, now we had this, we make the light really pop now. I'm gonna add a color balance. Where is it? There it is. And I'm gonna add some red to this and a bit of bluish tones and slightly some green. Now I'm gonna add a curves. So this is like the final step. And I'm gonna select red here. I'm gonna try to move these sliders. So make the darker tones a bit better. Let's move to green. Like that. And blue. Take the bottom part here, the dark tones, and move them slightly to the right to get some better balanced colors. And I think this is already done. I'm gonna put this in one folder by holding down Shift and press Ctrl G. You can see before we had this, now we change it to this. If you feel like it's too much, Just put them in a folder and drop the opacity and find a nice range where you think it looks good. So I'm going to drop it a bit like that. And I think this is done. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn more about Photoshop, make sure to check out my courses where I teach a lot more about everything inside Photoshop. So thanks for watching again, and hope you enjoyed this video, and catch you on the next one.